What a beautiful opening, I think, always, but especially this morning when I wanted to speak to you about that internal process of finding sacred space. I'd like to share with you some words from Khalil Gibran, a poet and philosopher, from his essay on religion. And an old priest said, "Speak to us of religion." And he said, "Have I spoken this day of aught else? Is not religion all deeds and all reflection, and that which is neither deed nor reflection, but a wonder and a surprise ever springing in the soul, even while the hands hew the stone or tend the loom? Who can separate his faith from his actions or his belief from his occupations? Who can spread his hours before him, saying, 'This is for God, and this is for myself. This for my soul, and this other for my body?' All your hours are wings that beat through the space from self to self. And he to whom worshiping is a window, to open but also to shut, has not yet visited the house of his soul, whose windows are from dawn to dawn. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with it your all. And if you would know God, be not therefore a solver of riddles. Rather look about you, and you shall see him playing with your children. And look into space, and you shall see him walking in the clouds, outstretching his arms in the lightning and descending in the rain. You shall see him smiling in flowers, then rising and waving his hands in trees." I believe there is something innate in us that wants to touch the divine, wants to know the mystery behind this energy that many of us call God. It's been known by countless names through centuries, written about in many scriptures, prayed to in perhaps thousands of languages. But there is this desire to touch it more deeply, to understand it more clearly, to know how to live with, from, and through it more fully. This wanting to know is this seeking, this calling within our soul that yearns for coming home. Because somehow living in these bodies, we take on the belief that we have become separated from this energy that created us. And so while we're here, it's useful to find ways to reconnect with that source, that essence that is the energy from which we have come. We're just here temporarily. This is a short-term reservation, folks. It has a cancellation date. We go home inevitably because home is the truth of who we are. But while we're here, there are many ways and hundreds of expressions that can give us that avenue to the sacred space that we innately desire. So we're going to explore some of those ways today through the language of poetry. But there are hundreds of ways. When faith sings, I am so in a sacred space. When I participate with you all singing that beautiful anthem, God, I give you my heart. How I feel the energy in this space just rise and settle on waves of divinity. That divinity within each of us. Truly, that must be the experience of Namaste, where we are touching into the heart of one another, into that space of oneness in God. This is an idea that has been spoken about in humankind across centuries. Moses had a conversation with God about it in the Old Testament, in Exodus chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here I am." Then he said, "Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." This place, for each of us represents holy ground. But this is so because we have made it so. It's just a building, right? 4 walls, well, mostly 4 walls. On Sunday, not so much. The beauty of our particular chapel is that we are open to the experience of nature as it is delivered on Sunday morning. But it is simply a structure. What makes it holy? Our intention infuses the holy in this space. It was built for the purpose of being a place to gather for worship and celebration, a place to gather to pray and to learn spiritual truth. And the energy that each one of us and countless people across decades before, since the mid-60s, that have come here for those purposes, have infused this space with this sweet energy. When we come in here in the middle of the week, just for ordinary chores, when I first come through the green room, I feel a sense of that energy being present. If you have not yet come to a Wednesday evening service to feel the holy ground of this room on Wednesday night, made that way by the intention of Levitt, Gary, Brian, Chris, all those who hold the space, Marty, and every person in the space, it is so sweet. It is truly transcendent. I invite you to come on a Wednesday evening. Now let me see if I can get back into my heels without catastrophe here this morning. One of the reasons I think that Moses was invited to take off his shoes was not only for this perhaps ancient tradition of being barefoot on the ground so that there are no obstacles between you and that energy that radiates from the earth. But metaphysically, I believe it was because God was asking Moses to remove all the limitations as he came to this experience of meeting God. To be fully present, open, to let down his guard, to open his heart fully, to take off your sandals, and to stand in the presence on holy ground. This is, I believe, an ancient calling in each of us humans. This photograph is a site of I keep wanting to say archaeological dig in Turkey. The name of it is Göbekli Tepe. My Turkish isn't very good. That's close. It is a massive architectural dig. It's hard to gather the sense of scale. But you see those large chunks of rock. There's one at the lower center. That is about double to triple the height of a human. They're massive stones, each one of them estimated to weigh 7 to 11 tons. And this was created in Neolithic times, the Stone Age. How? They have not a real clue. And they have only excavated a portion of the site, but they believe it to be a temple site. And it's sort of shifting the whole sociological understanding of the development of humankind, because it is believed that humankind developed the need for religion as they became in community because of the ability to domesticate crops and animals. Well, this is so ancient that it predates the domestication of grain harvesting. So these were hunter-gatherers who built a temple. And this the theory that's coming out of this dig is that societies developed the need to be in sacred community first, which is what drew them into communities, rather than the shift from hunter-gatherer to farming, to agriculture, that it's the sacred that formed the community. This is the oldest known sacred structure found, and 20 miles away from it, there's a slightly later development that they've discovered that where grain was domesticated and began harvesting. So it's a fascinating thing that this call to be in connection with the sacred has been with, perhaps from the beginning of humanity, innate with us. Now, this is an illustration of what they believe that one structure might have looked like, and it's because they've done underground X-ray, they know that this site has multiple of these sacred circles. They have no real clue about their purpose or how they were used or how these communities gathered, only that they did, and that they believed the purpose ultimately was sacred. Fascinating research. Now, all of this comes out of the book that Gary and Levitt and I and Reverend Deb Knowles are studying in our ministry group, and I wanted to just highlight it today because the thoughts for today's talk really come out of the work of Reverend Dr. Tom Shepard at Unity Institute and this book, The Many Faces of Prayer. We were delighted to have a chance to have our class led by Dr. Tom the other day and to experience the author live. It was, this book has just been a useful glimpse at prayer, finding sacred space across centuries and across many, many faiths, highlighting the need that all of us are looking for this beauty of prayer. One of the pieces in the book is poetry by a gentleman named Frederick Zidek. Interestingly enough, he has a connection to our church. Fred, if you're watching this morning, I'll be introducing you a little more later on. He's in Omaha, and he is a retired professor of theology at the College of St. Mary, a Catholic for most of his life. Well, at the time of his retirement, that happened to coincide with his leaving Catholicism. And his neighbors next door, they used to enjoy spiritual discussion. Well, those people went to Unity, and so Frederick went with his friends to the Unity Church. Who do you suppose was the minister there at that time? Why, Reverend Sky St. John. And they became very good friends. Frederick told me that Sky practically lived in their home. And they began to collaborate and teach classes together at that church and collaborate on writing, poetry, and other things. So from our almost friend, Frederick Zidek, I want to share this poem with you. Praying into the mystery. You must travel the back roads of silence. Weave your way through riddles too tall to scale. Wander with your soul open as a barn door with a broken hinge. Let the winds of wonder carry you as easily as the thermal drafts, like a dry leaf into the swillways of high-flying angels and migrating waterfowl. You must find a way to cage certain urges, especially those that tell you to run in the opposite directions of experiences that nest next to the holy, next to those sacred things that wait like windows and doorways and passages into the mystery. Enter reciting your own name in the color of your favorite stone. Don't be afraid to look in your own backyard. The secret waits in ordinary things, in yellow roses, the sweet fragrance of your morning tea. One of the greatest gifts I think we can give ourselves is this recognition that our lives are not separated in compartments, that Sunday is about church and my spiritual life, and the rest of the week is about the way I go about living and pragmatic issues, but that when we see the sacred, even in the small, ordinary details of our daily life, we begin to open our experience of God to that deepening richness that we innately desire. And one of the ways for me that has been a great gift from Sky St. John is to see that sacredness through the language of poetry. I rather miss that we changed and don't have a poem every week, so don't be surprised if it shows up kind of regularly. Because I think that language is lyrical, and because it's so unique to the poet, and because I and you, we all get to interpret it so individually, it opens for us the experience of the sacred that we are ready to hear and embrace in that given moment. But we're not done with Frederick. There were several of his poems in the book, and they truly are exquisite. You'll notice I have to use my reading glasses. Dr. Tom's book is very small print. Praying into the living center. Nothing in your vocabulary will get you to this place. You must pray with what the body knows but cannot put into words. Search through your instincts. Let them lead the way. They lived in the language of light long before you could even grunt. Remember that evening on the plains when the sun spilled its jar of oils as far as the eye could see? Let your spirit slide to the center the same way. Let it wander just beyond the reach of your doubts and slightly above the logical explanations you leave in their wake. Trust what the lungs have learned about breathing and what the eyes have discovered about light. They know the way better than you. Follow their lead the way musicians pursue a good tune. Pray the way you think God listens. Then wait to hear that mystery call your name. Within that mystery, your name is held in deep reverence. And when we open our heart to the experience, when we pray in whatever way we pray, whatever it looks like, when we see the sacred in every moment of living and everything that comes before us. Do you remember Sky St. John did a talk once? He said, this too is God. Whatever shows up, whatever it looks like it or don't like it, this too is God. If we approach our living, our everyday, with that reminder, then we open ourselves to the sacred in every moment, to expand our experience of God and deepen our understanding and our relationship with the mystery, that thing we are all searching for by whatever path we're searching it. That mystery holds our name already. Joseph Campbell said, your sacred space is where you can find yourself again and again. For not only out here is the sacred, but certainly deep within. That essence of God is the core of your very being. It calls from within you. It calls you toward living in relationship with the divinity. It calls you toward a holy purpose to express yourself from that divinity as compassion in the world. It calls from within you to just be that presence of love and wisdom. Open to it. Come to it again and again to experience yourself more fully. Another thing that Dr. Tom shared in the book was a piece of work from Dr. Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox was a divine science minister, a New Thought minister, very popular in the mid-1900s. He ministered to a large congregation in New York City, and he traveled a lot. And he was a prolific author. He wrote very, very numerous books. One of them, highly regarded, The Sermon on the Mount, has been almost an ancillary textbook in the 12-step and recovery community. He's very well known, perhaps best well known through that work. He also published a lot of small little essays. And one of them is called The Golden Key to Prayer. I believe it's no longer in print, but you can find it on the internet, and this is all the larger it is. 2 sides, 1-inch margins, 12-point font. It's a tiny little thing. There's some copies up here if you want one later. But I wanted to share some of the key points with us because prayer is so central to our experience of finding that divinity. Now, prayer can be defined in numerous ways. Poetry for me is prayer. Music is prayer. Dance is prayer. Movement is prayer. When people stand when we're singing that anthem and just sway to the music. When we get to the ending song where somebody brings a tune with some real high energy and you all leap to your feet and join in the clapping. Man, are we praying with joy then? It doesn't have to be solemn to be sacred. Joy infuses the sacred just as grandly as solemnity. So, and for me, joy is where I like to live. And so that kind of prayer is my home territory. So also is what Unity teaches. We are a movement founded on the energy of prayer and healing through prayer. And for Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder, she moved into a process that we call the silence. It was deep, reflective connection with the sacred as she understood it, that sacred being reflected to her by the image of Jesus. But whatever sacred imagery, whatever sacred process works for you, that's what matters. Prayer should be what works for you. I think that's the beauty of Dr. Tom's book, is it dances across all the possibilities of experiencing the sacred and says, it's a feast. Choose your dessert, folks. But Dr. Fox, let me share what he had to say, because apparently I've been echoing Dr. Fox for quite a long time through my spiritual journey. One of the things I'm fond of saying is the spiritual path is so simple. If I've made it difficult, it's me mucking up the works, not the difficulty in the spiritual path. It is simple processes that help us make the most progress. I won't say they're always easy. As Dr. Fox says, prayer will enable you sooner or later to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty on the face of the earth. That's a pretty large claim. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. To those who have no acquaintance with the mightiest power in existence, this may appear to be a rash claim, but it needs only a fair trial to prove that without a shadow of a doubt, it is a just one. You need take no one's word for it, and you should not. Simply try it for yourself and see. Beginners often get startling results at the first time of trying, for all that is absolutely essential is to have an open mind and sufficient faith to try the experiment. Apart from that, you may hold any views on religion or none. Our co-founders have said this same thing from the beginning of Unity, that this is what we believe, this is what we have found works, but you should try it on for yourself and figure out what works for you in your spiritual journey, where you stand at this moment, and what serves the enlightenment of your own process. Dr. Fox continues, as for the actual method of working, like all fundamental things, it is simplicity itself. All that you have to do is this: stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. This is the complete rule, and if only you will do this, the trouble, whatever it is, will presently disappear. Whatever it is, that trouble that's in front of you will disappear. It makes no difference what kind of trouble it is. It may be a big thing or a little thing. It may concern health, finance, a lawsuit, a quarrel, an accident, or anything else conceivable. But whatever it is, just stop thinking about it and think of God instead. That is all you have to do. That is all I have to do. Boy, I wish I always remembered the simplicity of it. When I'm facing one of those difficulties, large or small, sometimes I tend to forget my simple practices, and I get zeroed in on that thing that's irritating me or niggling me or is in front of me right now, the challenge, the problem, and I want to just worry it because I think that'll fix it somehow, because I've forgotten the simple truth. I grew up in a family with a mother who was a large worrier. She viewed life through the context of worry. And that kind of got ingrained in me as a child. It took me probably a full decade when I got conscious that that was how I was moving in life, and that didn't serve. I got exposed to some other thinking that showed me something else would be better. I began to work to let go of focusing on what was wrong and focusing on something better. And that became focusing on God, certainly after I arrived at Unity, but across the journey. So I started in one place, focusing on often things that weren't right, and we know what that gets us, right? That gets us more of the not right stuff. But when we will turn our attention away from it, no, it's there. We're not denying it's there, but you're just not giving it the energy. When you stop giving it the energy, it can wither, it can go away, it can disappear presently. When you turn your attention to God and let that be your focus, then the energy of something creative, the energy of something that's love-filled and has wisdom in it, then that can flourish. So here's this problem. It's right in front of me. Boy, does it have my attention. Okay, it's there. I'm going to have to contend with it, no doubt, because here it is in my life. And sometimes the worst thing is, I put it there by some means or the other. I'm responsible for what shows up in my life. But I don't have to keep giving it creative energy with my attention. So I just turn over here and I focus on God, something positive, something of beauty, of joy, of love, and of light. This is still here. And I'm going to walk the path of dealing with it, but I'm going to do that with the energy of God moving through me, as Faith said with her beautiful hands. The energy of God moving through me is how I will move through whatever this challenge is. Now, we stand at a place in our community where it's possible to see the challenge rather than the goal ahead. I believe in the goal, which is the expansion of this community, which is the unity of all of us coming together, maybe eventually, in agreement, knowing that we have been called to a big mission here within this church and in our community, that we have agreed to answer that call with our energy and our love and our support. Now, as we make choices for the future of this community, there are lots of ideas, differing ideas of how best to get to that goal. What I know for absolute certain is everybody's wish is the same. The expansion, the meeting the dream that can be this community of living in the love of God. We may not see it as the same path, but we have the same goal. So whenever there are tensions that arise, I see them, but I'm going to focus on the power and the presence of God to be the energy through which I walk through that challenge. And I invite that in your own life. Whatever has your attention in this moment, allow the presence of God to be the energy that carries you through to the goal, which is always going to be light-filled, love-powered, wisdom-created. Those are the hallmarks of the presence of God. And so you know when you're moving in love, operating with your own interior wisdom, then you will get to the goal that you desire. In that sacred space, we find not only the truth for our own living, but we find the solution for all things we face with the energy of God. I invite you to join me in a moment of recognition of that space inside. Take a breath with me and center in this space of complete love, of wholeness, knowing that at any moment you can come to this sacred place at the center of your being. Perhaps you find a ball of golden light there. Watch it expand. Fill the inside of your whole body until it surrounds your whole physical space. And you are contained in a ball of golden light. Know that this sacred space is always present in you. It awaits only your recognition, your invitation to be fully alive and awake. So in a few moments, choose to come to this sacred space, recognize it fully, and join in the silence with God.